All right, welcome to another Bragging Rights Weekly Hobby Progress Update. This week I'm actually going to spend most of my time showcasing Relic miniatures and talking about those. I have a new unit of Thracian Cavalry, and when you're thinking Thracian Cavalry, I think maybe a few different eras might come to mind. The main would be times of hoplite warfare, and you imagine Thracians as wearing the Phrygian cap with a kind of long ear flaps in the front and a really heavily patterned long tunic in the back, likely no armor and maybe one of those crescent pelta. Those are great units. I'd love to paint up one of those. Relic actually makes the other end of the spectrum, Thracians from Hellenistic era that would have been more heavily armored, and would have been serving, I think, mostly as mercenaries across the successor kingdoms. So here is that unit. And these are Thracians that, for me, are primarily going to serve in my Ptolemaic forces. I have a Ptolemaic army that it's really optimized for the era around the Battle of Raphia, and prior to that, some of the conflicts against, interestingly enough, I believe he's also a Ptolemy, but conflicts against the spin-off state of Kyrene. And I say it different every time, it's always wrong. But anyways, these are Thracian cavalry trying to target Battle of Raphia, and all Relic miniatures. And some of the things I really liked about putting these together are the sculpts have a nice action pose and are certainly threatening looking cavalry. They have that mercenary appeal as they're very non-uniform. There are custom shields that come in 3 different varieties, and I really like having that variety of the shields. A lot of variety in heads, way more than 3. There are multiple horse types, again, kind of giving that visual appeal to the unit. And interchangeable arms, so you can configure javelins and swords as you see fit. I went for a very non-uniform look here, other than everybody had the same basic cloth patterns, just I went with different colors for each. And I did just a little bit of differentiation as well on the armor and horses. I went with a cream line of thorax so that I could use white elsewhere on the model. Like on the horses and horsehair, I wanted to use white, so I thought, oh, let's keep white off the line of thorax for these models. The shields come in varieties that have the javelins built in, which I find nice. I just created one of my own broomstick javelins for this guy holding one up in the air. And the shield transfers are from Relic. And Relic's strength in shield transfers, I think, is in the designs. The process of putting these shield transfers on is more time consuming and not as forgiving as something like Little Big Men. But the designs are superior in a lot of ways, depending on your tastes. For me, I really want my Thracians to have Relic designs. Same goes for my Celts. If I get into Illyrians, definitely feel that way too. And Successor Theros in general, I feel like there's nothing better out there than what Relic's doing for their shield designs. There are other things, though, where I'm actually preferring Little Big Men. Hoplons and Aspis in particular, and Pelta, I really prefer the Little Big Men designs there. So I think they work well together, though. And let me talk a little bit about the scale of these models. So if you're thinking about picking some up, yeah, I highly recommend it. But let's know what you're getting into, because Relic is known for true scale. They don't have that toddler look. They're well proportioned or realistically proportioned. Well proportioned is more of an act of taste, but let's see how they look. So if we compare them to Warlord, you'll see that the horses especially are very, very consistent between the two companies. Like you could swap out horses very easily. That said, I never would, because Relic's horses are far, far, far superior to Warlords. Warlords are poorly cast and poorly designed from a practical standpoint, although they look fine. But they break at the ankle so often, they break at the tail so often, and you know, maybe if you have 5 of them, you might be saying, oh no, there's never any problems with these. Well, I have like closer to 35. You know, I think I have 32 of them, and I've got enough experience and I have enough of them to know for sure these horses break and bend very often, far too often for my liking. That said, both rider and horse very well proportioned against Relic. I think you can mix them in the same unit easily. And like if you look at some of these helmet varieties, you know, forget the shields and the lances, but if you look at these helmet varieties, I think they'd mix nicely with this unit of Thracians. Now, if we look at the other end of the spectrum and think about, you know, popular manufacturers here that might go into the same successor kingdom army, we have Victrix. Victrix are the other end of the scale, and there's a few things to note here. These are Victrix plastics from the Greek light cavalry range. And I should mention the Warlord I showed were converted Alexander's successor, or Alexander Companion Cavalry, where I chopped off some arms and heads and did some swaps, and obviously put on big giant shields because I wanted those particular transfers. But anyways, Victrix to Relic, it's a pretty big difference. The horses are gigantic, and the riders, really the riders are gigantic too. And when you put them up like this, it's clearly evident. The proportions on the Victrix have really large bulbous heads. I've got a toddler upstairs, and I just can't get it out of my head that Victrix models, for the most part, look like toddlers. That said, I actually like that look for a lot of things, especially in my old school Warhammer. So I'm not knocking that style. It's just really hard to mix it with a style like Relics. These Tarentines, Western Tarentines, however, if you just have them in the same army, there's not a problem, right? These are units that can exist together in the same army on the same battlefield. I just don't think you'd want them in a position where they're up against each other or mixed into units. It won't work. The horses alone are going to be immediately detectable. So a few other things to say about this Relic, we'll call it a week. I spent a little extra time on the shields than I would on Little Big Men because I like those designs. And, you know, while I'm doing it, I often find it to be a pain. But when I'm done, I'm always glad I did it. So it sometimes can feel like a chore to go through the different steps. But again, I'll repeat, when I'm done, I'm always glad I did. And I'm always looking to order more of them. Illyrians are the next one that's kind of caught my eye. I'm a little ways away from an army that needs Illyrians. I need to finish off my Ptolemaics first. I'd like to show off some of the unpainted models from Relic, just to point out a couple things. These haven't been touched, just taking them out of the bag for the first time as shipped. Here's one of their horses. Excuse me, one piece, pretty dynamic running pose. Has supports down at the bottom. Some people don't like these. I really do, because from a practical standpoint, you know, horses, just anatomically speaking, they have points of failure at the ankle, right? And that's true of any sculpt of them as well. So these, with these supports and with just a little bit of bulk, you can see a little bit of bulk around these legs, these are sturdy. These aren't going to break. You're not going to have an issue. The tail isn't going anywhere either. Very little cleanup needed here. Just a little bit here on the mold line there, and you got a little bit of flash, but not bad at all. The cast is like, you know, perfect. in terms of symmetry. A little bit of cleanup, but not bad. The riders, you know, in metal models, I can go either way. Sometimes I like single cast metal models for the simplicity, and you know, I can be in that mode. But for a unit like this, that is mercenaries that can serve in many different successor kingdoms and, you know, a couple hundred years of time span, they're interesting in that you get the body and the shield arm, and then all of them have a cloak. And there's not much variety in this portion of it. You can bend that arm, which I have on a couple, but then you get variety in the shields available, which breaks it up visually. And then on the arms, you have multiple sword arms, you have open hands, which can become spears, lances, whatever. You have command models, including musicians and banners. And these banners, of course, like all the Relic stuff, is supported by really well thought out transfers. And you know, this kit becomes very versatile as a result of that. I don't know, from the heads perspective, there are a ton of heads that can go into these sockets. Relic's got socketed heads that I believe are universal. There might be 2 different types of sockets. I think I might have seen that in the past. But there's a lot of variety across the successor states, and these cavalry can take the heads of most of those units that are out there. I mean, you could even do head swaps with things that are mixed units of mercenary cavalry that just come from the greater Greek world if you wanted to. And this could go beyond just Thracians. So it's very versatile from that perspective. And the multi-piece metal kit sometimes can be a burden to put together, right? And you kind of, if I would never use this, I'm just not a fan of products like this, but people might be tempted to use zip kicker or things like that just to aid in the assembly. I didn't have any assembly issues at all. All I was using was Gorilla Glue gel. I did no cleaning of the metal. I didn't scrape or scour, didn't use any green stuff. Just really easily took all the metal parts to make this cavalry. And as you saw, it's about as many metal parts as most plastic kits nowadays. So a lot of versatility, went together really nicely, very little cleanup needed, and you come out with what feels like a very historically sound and very practical and great looking unit. So I couldn't be more pleased with how these came out. And I've had these in my shopping cart so many times in the past few years, and I was really excited to get them in the mail recently, and I'll be painting up some more. So keep your eyes out for more Relic in the coming weeks and months. And eventually, when I do a showcase of my Ptolemaic army, first I have to consider it done. But once I get to that showcase, you'll see that little by little, I've converted a lot of my existing stuff to Relic, just because I love it so much. All right, well, have a great week. This was a light week for painting. I'm going to be hitting it pretty hard next week with the final preparations for the Penobscot expedition. So it's likely to be Perry all the time for next week's showcase. All right, thanks.